All right, so originally this game was kind of just like a truth or dare question to me, a truth question, where you just ask it and hear what the person says in the moment. But the more this question has been a part of my life, and this has been this like mental game that I've played with friends, and it's like become this sort of inside joke in my family, the more I realize, no, this is some cool stuff that you should really take the time to develop and think on, and it can be this like work in progress. So it is, if you were the owner of a land or the president of a country, and I don't just mean president with all the Congress and other people helping you decide the rules, but like the one and only rule maker for the entire country. Not this country, maybe it's your own island, whatever, but if you were the person in charge, the one and only rule maker for all of the land, and you had this opportunity to create your own little island, what would those rules of your country be? What kind of laws would be in place? And sure, you can start with the basics, like sure, people aren't going to kill each other, etc. But also, this is a game, so get playful. I mean, first of all, for the sake of amusement, but second of all, there's plenty of information in those things too. There's plenty of seriousness. Like, I have a friend that was like, all weed whackers should be outlawed. Like right now, there's some sort of saw in the background. I don't even know if you can hear it. But I'm with him. I'm like, oh, sure, weed whackers and loud mowers and things should be outlawed. But, he said that as a total joke. And yeah, absolutely. But there was also seriousness in there for him, where it's like, actually, we could see, if we were to examine further, that the environment and caring for the environment is a really important thing to him. And weed whackers, in his opinion, don't. Or things that are very efficient and well thought out and not just like lazy hacks are really important to him. And that was what was playing into some of the reason why he hates weed whackers. He hates them. They happen to be like a nemesis, but it's because they just kind of represent laziness to him, and, an inefficient system or something that like destroys the earth, or maybe not. I mean, also there's a component of it that's just like silence. Like, he appreciates peace and silence. I know that about him. Like, whenever he's talking about the most pleasurable moments in his life, they're usually like these peaceful tranquility. Like, that's what he's going for in life, is like finding more peace and more tranquility. And like, lo and behold, this detest of weed whackers still points to it. It's a funny thing, and it's amusing for us to sit around and tell inside jokes about how like the weed whackers would be totally outlawed, and what would we do for the grass that would get out of control. And then he's like, well, we would get rid of all the grass and we'd plant actual real food, or let the forests grow up, and nobody needs a weed whacker in an actual natural environment. So it goes down the chain, and we get to play with it and joke with it, and then see the other things come up in the joke. The other things, like the environmental aspect, then comes out like right away, quick to the front. You can see that, environment and letting things be natural is important to him. But there's also that really deep stuff in there too, if you care to look. Like, wow, tranquility and peace is this deep, deep motivating thing in his life. It's what he's after. It's what he always wants more of. And, holy crap, you can see that his like disdain for these weed whackers is in that same vein. So it can show you a lot about yourself, but it's also just highly amusing. And sometimes it's also an exercise in, I don't know, just like kind of a layer of creativity and problem solving that you don't really think of. Like, my daughter took this question and started really coming up with some cool ideas, where it's like, man, I would have never thought of that. But yeah, well, this other friend that I played it with, he was really big on like, I don't want there to be any petroleum products, because maybe he also is an advocate for the environment. But I thought it was interesting because when I sort of want to give my best wishes to the world, where it's like, okay, this is how I think the world would dramatically improve. I wanted to outlaw junk food and crap food so that everybody's health would improve, their mental clarity would improve, they would be more intelligent, and like everything would trickle down after that. You know, we would stop doing stupid things like destroying our environment because we would have a deeper respect and our bodies would be healthy, and we'd have a deeper respect for natural things if we were not allowed to just like sit and gorge on crappy chemical, not food that was like poison. But he thought that the solution started with petroleum products, like remove all petroleum products, and then everything would trickle down from there. And the solutions would start to fall into place in people's personal lives from there. But then he started to see some flaws in there, like, oh, but that wouldn't change this. And me too, you know, I started to realize like, oh, you know, but people might still overindulge in all these other things that wouldn't take care of their personal discipline, but it would at least take actual poison off of the market, you know? So anyway, and you start to learn how your perspective is different than others. And it's this creative problem solving. It's like you've just entered into this creative problem solving place that made you start to think down areas and little avenues that you might not have before. And it sort of shows you what's front and center on your heart, you know, like quality of food is obviously for me. And it ties into the environment for me. But for him, it was like petroleum or something. And then, you know, another one, I don't remember if this was my daughter's or somebody else's, but was about people respecting each other. It's like, I think people should literally get a citation or a ticket or a fine or something if they are disrespectful to another person. And it's like, okay. I mean, and then of course, then it adds further questions and further fuel to the fire of thought and creativity. Like, well, how are you going to define that? How are you going to define what's disrespectful to another person? I mean, not to be a jackass and make the game not fun, because you could like refute every single thing that someone says and it could turn into like a total debate team type of thing. And you could go there. Okay, so the camera died and also it was getting dark out there. So what I was saying is you can do the debate team thing if you want, if that's fun for you. But the point isn't just to pick apart the things that are being put on the table and prove impossibility in every single scenario. The point is to lay out some rules. What are the things you would want? Because then you're learning about you, or you're just seeing a reflection of you. And it's this game that's fun on its own because you can absolutely come up with ridiculous stuff. There doesn't need to be something that can actually be enforceable. It can be totally ridiculous, impossible stuff, like no weed whackers. Okay, what, you know, how are people to cut grass, you know? But it doesn't matter because it all is supposed to be in the fun of exploration and in the fun of defining things about yourself. But when there are things like the question of, hey, I want people to get cited when they are disrespectful to other people, you can ask further questions that are really obvious like that would actually help give you more information that need to be chased down, not to prove whether that's possible or impossible, because it's probably impossible that you could actually cite people or have a system for citing people whenever they are disrespectful, because that would be difficult to define or difficult to enforce, whatever. That's not the point. It's not about the proving or disproving of the possibility of these situations. It's more like, well, if you want people to get some sort of ticket or fine whenever they are disrespectful to another person, tell me more about what that even means to you. What kind of disrespect? What do you mean? What would disrespectful be? Like anything? If you gave somebody a sideways glance, like, would that be? I mean, you know, and it can be funny and ridiculous, like, or no, like actual overt disrespect, like defined by what, you know? And that's an interesting thing to hear what the other person has to say or what you have to say, because you may be the one asking these further inquiries, but like what, you know? And that tells you more, like, oh no, I don't mean just like sideways glances. I mean, people should be able to handle that kind of disrespect, but like the disrespect where someone says an open insult about you, Oh, okay. So then maybe people are not allowed to say statements about other people. They can only ask them, or they can use description words, or, when they're, but like they can't say, like, you are this. They can only say statements about what they are. That's a thing. That's a thing in psychology. I know in relationship advice, they say, don't make anything other than I statements. Don't make statements about the other person. Just only make statements about you. Anyway, so whatever. Maybe that's a rule. But the point is, like I said, to get wacky and ridiculous with it, and also even in the wacky and ridiculous, no weed whackers or nobody's allowed to eat crap food or whatever, see where your real values are. See that reflection of you within it. See what you prioritize and enjoy the creativity and, just the musing of like, what would I do to get things on track? It's almost like a gift. Like, if you could give the world one gift, what would it be? Because obviously, if I think one of the very first things I would do is get rid of poisonous food, like that's a big gift that I would like to give. That's something that's really upfront on my heart. Maybe I should look at that, and it does play a huge role in my life. But maybe I should be really giving it to others more instead of just like doing it for myself. But if I think everybody needs to do it, so much so that I would make a rule, well then, maybe I need to, do something in that regard to help other people with that. So for what it is, see if you could come up with the entire rule structure for your land, your country. And like I said, take time. It is definitely something that develops. Like you could spend a year developing this massive list of things that would and would not be allowed or how they would go. It's like, creating your avatar in some sort of game, like layers and layers and layers of tweaks and things